Okay, here we are. Welcome everyone. I see some people are joining the call now. Awesome. Well, I'll get started here. Let me just change this. Here we go. All right, well, thank you everyone for joining us today for our Practical Pathways to Net Zero webinar. And thank you to our co-hosts, eDecision and Alberta Innovates. I'm really excited for the content that's coming up today. We have Jared Toll from EnergyCAP Canada. We have Adam Travato from SPG and Floyd Simons from eDecisions. So really excited for today's webinar. My name is Rachel. I am the Sustainability Manager with DEC, and I'll be facilitating today's webinar. A few housekeeping things before we get started. We'll have a 10 to 15-minute Q&A portion at the end of the webinar. Please feel free to put your questions in the chat throughout, and we will address them at the end. As well, we'll be running a few poll questions throughout between presentations. So if you've never used this feature before, you'll just see a dialog box pop up and you can select your answer from the options that are shown. It's very straightforward. And before we get started, I'd like to do a land acknowledgement. So the DEC offices are located on the traditional territories of the Treaty 7 nations in Southern Alberta, as well as the Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3. All right, next slide, please, Crystal. So a little bit about DEC. So Decentralized Energy Canada, we are a national nonprofit industry association. We are dedicated to the development of decentralized energy, and our main offering is a networking pathway for businesses. We hold a variety of networking events throughout the year to ensure that the right folks are connected to one another. And we also host an annual forum, the Decentralized Energy Forum, which is back on again this year after a few years break. It'll be taking place at the Fairmont Chateau Laurier in Ottawa on November 8th and 9th. And we are having our early bird sale right now, which is running until July 10th. And there are some great deals. So be sure to head to our website, www.deforum.ca, to get your ticket and to learn more about the event. A few other things we do is we hold some programs throughout the year. So we have Community Energy Project Enablement Program. We work with Global Affairs Canada's Can Export Program, and we help support export-ready Canadian companies gain access to foreign markets. We also do some work with the Standards Council of Canada and in creating a standardized terminology to be used in the decentralized energy industry across Canada. And if you want to learn more about us or follow what we're up to, you can go to our website and sign up for our newsletter. That's deassociation.ca, or you can follow us on LinkedIn or Twitter. Next slide, please, Crystal. All right, so to set the stage for today, a few stats or a little bit of information about Canada's movement towards net zero. So the federal government has started making moves towards a net zero energy future, including the Canadian Net Zero Emissions Accountability Act, which became law on June 29th, 2021. And it put into legislation Canada's commitment to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. The government also set into place a series of shorter term frameworks and plans that aim to keep these initiatives on track, including the Canada Strengthened Climate Plan, the Pan-Canadian Framework, and the 2030 Emissions Reduction Plan. We also have some Canadian examples of businesses and communities that are working towards these net zero targets, including the Canadian Home Builders Association, which is contributing to net zero homes and building development. And the University of Calgary, closer to home, is a leader in green building construction. And DEC ourselves, we're also contributing to this movement. We work with communities' energy project plans and ensure that their projects align with their climate action targets. And many of them have net zero targets as well. And we also have members that are contributing to increase energy efficiency and that offer technologies that promote emissions reduction, such as the ones that we'll be hearing from today. And final slide, please, Crystal. All right, that's it. Thank you for joining us today. Hope you all enjoyed today's webinar on practical pathways to net zero and what you can do to get started. If you want to learn more about DEC or be put in touch with today's speakers, you can email me at rgradine@deassociation.ca. And now we'll move on to our first poll of the day, just before our first speaker, Jared Toll of EnergyCAP Canada. Okay, so here is the poll question. So first question is, why have you joined the webinar? Please feel free to place your response there. A few responses coming in here. Want to learn how I can achieve net zero for my company's properties is the majority here. General interest in sustainability. All right. I think we'll cap it off there. Looks like most people have a general interest in sustainability. And yeah, we'll pass it off to Jared Toll of EnergyCAP Canada.
Thank you for that, Rachel. Let me share my screen here. Great. Good afternoon and good morning. My name is Jared Toll, and I'm the Director of Sales at EnergyCAP Canada, based out of Toronto, Ontario. I'm here to talk to you a little bit about getting quality and insightful data as a critical first step in any journey towards net zero, and also energy cost reduction. So the agenda for today is a company overview, a little bit of software functionality, getting to the importance of energy information, discussing utility data workflow, and 4 reasons why an energy accounting and a utility bill accounting and energy management software can get you on that first step towards net zero. So a little bit about us. Our mission at EnergyCAP Canada is to empower you on this first integral step and to help you easily and even automatically optimize your data through technology-based solutions. With over 19 years of experience, we've been servicing the Canadian marketplace, the industry-leading energy accounting and utility management system, EnergyCAP. EnergyCAP is a software that's developed out of State College, Pennsylvania, and is a product of 40+ years of experience. Its functions and features have been largely driven by consumer needs and requests. Let me get into a little bit more details about who we service in Canada. So you can see here, these are some of our clients in Canada, including the province of Alberta, the city of Toronto, and many others, and our Natural Resource Canada as well. And again, if you have any questions, please do ask after this, or you can contact me directly. So what is EnergyCAP? EnergyCAP is a software that serves as a hub for your vendor, utility, and facility data, and provides powerful analytical and reporting functionality to deliver value across various silos of your organization. We provide a range of services and tools to help you turn your energy information into actionable data. On this slide, you can actually see that there's a cross-organizational impact that EnergyCAP seeks to commit to, as we provide a standardized platform that can service enterprises and organizations of all sorts of sizes. EnergyCAP's energy management software will allow you and your sustainability team to quickly identify inefficient facilities, evaluate the impact of conservation efforts, obtain Energy Star ratings, track emissions, and communicate through live energy dashboards and over 300+ reports. So now moving back to the pathway. The most significant opportunities for energy efficiency and carbon reduction reside in the buildings you manage. Organizations that make an impact on carbon reduction start by comprehending the resource consumption in their buildings to execute data-driven energy efficiency improvements, and then they layer on green initiatives. As such, to move forward on the path to net zero, it is integral to get a hold of your energy information. And I apologize, I'm close to a window so you can hear the birds chirping in the background. Thus, having access to and deriving value from your energy information is an essential to building a solid foundation for your sustainability initiatives. And as buildings are complex and getting a hold of your data can be a complex endeavor, we can let you in on a little secret to get started, which is utility bills. So utility invoices hold the resource data needed by energy managers and sustainability leaders to drive carbon reduction programs. Utility bills hold insight into your building's efficiencies and provide hands-on access to your data you need to start making the right decisions. The good thing about utility bills is everyone has them readily available for the most part, and they're relatively standardized. So if you're looking for somewhere to start with getting the right data, the data that you need to get on this pathway to net zero, utility bill data is a low-hanging fruit. You already have this data somewhere in your organization, and what may be missing is a software or a tool that can collect and analyze this data for you. and provide you with the resources and the analytics needed to start making those decisions that will lead you towards net zero. We offer award-winning energy management utility bill accounting software that serves as your hub for your utility, energy, and ESG data, and provides you really with the foundational programming you need to get started on making those right decisions towards carbon reduction and net zero. We often find that utility data is typically processed by a person manually inputting data in an organization, and there can be lags of 1 to 2 months when this is using these traditional processes. And this can really be cumbersome to energy professionals who are ready and ambitious to make an impact. And that's where we really step in. As we've been helping customers do this for decades, we really provide them with the sustainable foundation in order to process all of these bills collected on their behalf, and then provide them with the data that's provided in graphs, charts, and different analytics to make that process easy. As you can see here on this slide, there's a range of data that goes into the system, EnergyCAP, vendor bills being one of them, as well as sub-meter readings. They can go into EnergyCAP in a range of ways, and we'll get to that in a second. And then they're presented in a way that they've been audited, so we'll get to that as well, and then analyzed in various frameworks, which can then be exported to external systems, and as you can see here, Portfolio Manager. Bill data can be made readily available through EnergyCAP, and it can be provided to a range of users. So rather than isolated in an Excel spreadsheet or an accounting system, your staff will have this data on hand in a standardized platform. And this way, your staff can make important data-driven decisions and demonstrate the ROI of their initiatives. We're also in the process of developing a bill payment tool to further that efficiency of processing these utility bills. And there's 4 main reasons why utility accounting and energy management software is an essential foundation to the practical pathway to net zero. The first is you need a holistic approach to maintaining accurate data. So up-to-date, consistent, and comprehensive data allows you to establish benchmarks and ensure decision makers have the information they need to ensure your organization's success. Achieving net zero carbon emissions is simply not possible when you're relying on intuition, gut feelings, or outdated and inaccurate data. So first and foremost, you need the accurate data. Once you have access to your utility bill data, the next step is then to audit that data, ensure that it's accurate. The old adage speaks to this the best: garbage in, garbage out. So you really need to have that good data in order to get the outputs you need to then be making those decisions to move towards net zero. So EnergyCAP provides this type of auditing tool. Once the data is brought into the system, you will configure the audits, as you can see here on this slide. And then those bills will be flagged if the audit catches any anomalies or anything that looks a little bit out of the norm. Another thing to mention is you need the holistic approach to this data. This could be done through things like weather normalization, so ensuring that you're establishing a baseline, removing the weather factor, and getting a fair picture of your actual data. So you can do this directly with utility invoices using our measure and verification tool called cost avoidance. And then you can see the real results of your energy conservation efforts. So this will move you to energy efficiency, operating your facilities in an efficient manner, and then focusing on finding the renewable energy sources that you need to make your way to net zero. Another honorable mention is that we also can do this with atypical accounts and renewables. So this is just an example. You need more than just natural gas, electricity, water, and waste. There's all sorts of different things that go into this program. Next is efficiency. So manually processing and analyzing utility data is just not a modern approach, and thus it shouldn't be a part of your modern sustainability program, especially if carbon neutrality is expected in the near future. And this is where EnergyCAP comes in to process efficiently and more accurately than antiquated methodologies. A powerful tool will enable you to say goodbye to spreadsheets, late fees, and inefficiencies. And we also provide a flexible API to integrate with existing systems. So this can be done, and this is the example that I've included here in this slide, is RedScreen. We're currently in the process of developing an API with RedScreen that will enable EnergyCAP users to push out their data into RedScreen to receive, to then use both systems in tangent. So this is just an example of some of the innovation that takes place with EnergyCAP and why it's so important to have a system that's integrated with other systems. Another very important factor with efficiency is actually collecting the utility data. So we have something called the capture services at EnergyCAP, which literally automates the data collection from utility bills. We'll take them directly from the vendors if possible, and bring them into a system. They'll be audited, as you can see throughout this process here. Bill images will be linked. You can set up reports automatically. And then now we're actually working on going one step further and creating bill payment process, which you'll see here on this next slide. So the third reason why having an energy management utility bill accounting tool is so fundamental to getting this first step is having that data then presented to you with automated analytics that make it very easy for reporting and different monitoring endeavors. So while professionals may understand energy data, a lot of the time lay people do not. And a lot of the time key stakeholders just don't speak this language. They don't have the sustainability or the engineering background. And that's why it's fundamental to present this data in charts and graphs that really make it easy to understand. Here at EnergyCAP, we do this in a variety of different ways. The two main ways that I'm going to be showcasing here is that when the data comes into EnergyCAP, it can be populated automatically using user configurable dashboards, which can be embedded in your external web page, filtered, configured in a whole range of ways, or using our reporting tool, which provides all sorts of different reports. So now I'm just going to move to the last little section here, which is the final opportunities for savings and reduction. One cannot manage what is not measured. So reducing expenses resulting from reduced energy consumption can potentially fund other green initiatives to help achieve the organization's sustainability goals. To identify opportunities for efficiency, savings, and reductions, you need a system that's able to fully understand the data that you have available. So you'll want to use different types of tools like benchmarking to find inefficient facilities. And this can be done, again, once that data is collected, audited, and presented in a way that's easy to understand and to get to the bottom of. So benchmarking is a fundamental way to find the low-hanging fruit and the places where you can really reduce carbon and energy usage or consumption, as well as tracking your projects through measure and verification of savings to see which projects are the most successful, which initiatives have the best ROI. And also tracking your carbon footprint directly in the system in EnergyCAP. I think I went a little bit over, so I'll finish with this. Once you have a good understanding of your building data and have optimized for energy efficiency, it is the perfect time to take some of those dollars saved and expand your program and other carbon reduction initiatives. With a system like EnergyCAP, you can consistently and continuously report on your program's impact and derive towards a net zero future. Thank you, and I apologize for going a little bit over my time.
Awesome. Thank you, Jared.
No problem.
All right, we'll go to our next poll question. Here we are. So we just split up, they were all in one page before, so we just split them up. So please, if you've already answered this one, please answer it again. What are the barriers to moving forward with a net zero energy efficiency project? Give you about 30 seconds here. Some answers coming in. All right, I think we'll close the poll now. So the main barrier is money/funding, followed by time/capacity and organizational buy-in. All right, thanks for your answers, everyone. We'll move on to Adam of SPG.
Okay, thank you, everyone. And good morning, everyone. And good afternoon to those of us on the eastern side of the country. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today on our presentation where we're talking about pathways to net zero. My name is Adam Travato. I'm a certified energy manager and an engineering technologist, and I manage the project development here at SPG. I've spent the last decade or so in the energy efficiency and sustainability space, meaning I've spent a lot of time and a considerable amount of my career working with energy audits and doing them, interpreting them, and working with clients to actually fulfill the energy conservations recommended within them. So without further ado, I will present here on energy audits on the pathway to net zero. Okay, so diving into the agenda, I'm jamming in a normally 30 to 40 minute presentation into 15 minutes. So I'm going to be moving fast. And so I'll start off by introducing SPG, go over at a high level what an energy audit is, discuss sort of the many benefits of an energy audit and why one might go about getting one, and why they're critical of getting to net zero. And then following this, we'll dive into the process of what an energy audit is, and what it looks like both on-site, off-site, and what you can ultimately expect from the final deliverable. Okay, so who is SPG? SPG is a design, build, energy efficiency and sustainability contractor that works to provide turnkey energy efficiency and sustainability projects. In a lot of cases, that means starting with an energy audit, which will then follow up with any necessary engineering and design work, funding and rebate applications, so helping actually get the money to install these projects, and then into the actual installation of the projects fulfilling those recommendations. We work across the country with a primary focus on Western Canada, having offices in Vancouver, the Okanagan, Calgary, and Edmonton. And then we do have projects and staff throughout Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and the Yukon. So diving into the meat of the presentation, what is an energy audit? An energy audit is an assessment of a building that displays the current use of the facility, along with the associated costs and needs of the building, while communicating methods to reduce the consumption without negatively impacting the building. So more simply put, an energy audit is a report that tells you what's going on in your building and provides you several pathways to improving the building by reducing the building's utility expense, carbon footprint, while improving the overall functionality. So most notably for this presentation, the audit will provide you with the pathways to achieving net zeros by identifying the baseline energy use, and then the projects that can reduce the actual energy consumption, as well as the projects that can generate power on site, whether that be solar PV or air source heat pumps or what have you. So generally, an audit will provide the building owner with upwards of 10 potential projects that can help reduce the utility expenses and the greenhouse gas emissions of the facility. And all these measures are accompanied by several environmental, financial, and kind of social metrics often that help you evaluate the project from a few different angles. So you'll have simple payback, you'll have net present value, return on investment, greenhouse gas savings, capital cost, and so on. And that allows you to really accurately evaluate those projects and help determine your capital plans with a little bit more intention. And within these measures, we are looking at all aspects of the building, including the HVAC, the lighting, the building envelope, renewable energy projects, controls, occupancy habits, and so on. And then we identified distinct projects such as an LED lighting retrofit, variable frequency drives to a certain pump or motor, condensing boilers, solar PV, and whatnot. So very specific projects that are contextualized for your building and then costed out in your building. So it's not just telling you, LED lighting retrofits are great. It's telling you the LED lighting retrofit will cost you $21,000. It's going to save you $5,000 a year, this amount of greenhouse gas emissions, and so forth. And then audits are generally designated in three types: a level 1 audit, which is a walkthrough audit of the facility; a level 2, which is generally the industry standard, which is a detailed energy audit; and then a level 3 audit, which is an investment grade audit. which just based on time, I won't really go into the distinctions, but the higher the level, the more detailed the audit. Excuse me. So the benefits of an energy audit are multiple. So first and foremost, benchmarking and understanding the facility, which will allow the building owner to set a baseline energy use, track this usage on an ongoing basis, and then verifying energy savings post-project. So it's always, as we just heard, it's always really important to actually dive into that utility data and really understand what's going on in your building. And then furthermore, this gives you an opportunity to dive into your utility contract and take a look at your rate, make sure everything's good there, and make sure that there's not a new contract warranted, and that you could be getting a better deal somewhere else. So most clients, the main thing is the energy conservation measure and project identification. So most building owners and operators, you all know there are projects within the building that you can save money on, but you don't really know where to start or which project is best. So this is a perfect way of identifying projects and receiving an apples to apples comparison between the two projects. With an audit, you can clearly identify and compare the impact of a lighting retrofit versus a window replacement from various different metrics, and then contextualize them based on your organization's goals and priorities, and then move forward with the projects accordingly. Once the projects are identified, like I said, we work within the parameters of the building owner, such as annual budget, equipment replacement intervals, occupancy tenant changeover, and so on, to provide a clear pathway and clear next steps to supporting lower greenhouse gas emissions, lower operating costs, accessing certain rebates or subsidies, and improving the building functionality. So there are different priorities for different building owners, and then we can always contextualize that on as best as possible. And then, important for this project, and honestly, just as we move forward in the sustainability space, is providing the pathway to net zero. This is a really huge benefit of the energy audit, and on pretty much all these net zero plans, there is an energy audit integrated into the project plan, because the audit's going to provide the fundamental data and information that's going to formulate the net zero plan. And we'll get more into that later, but really the audit is going to give you the projects, and really from those projects, you then develop a plan and put the puzzle together. And then finally, an audit actually does allow the owner and operators to pair the process of capital planning, asset management, and sustainability planning into a single process, and can often result in the ability to identify and access certain government rebates and subsidies. Okay, so I'll probably breeze over this just based on time, but the process of an energy audit, it can vary slightly from building, and maybe a little bit even from company to company. But the first step is always for us to meet with the building representative, discuss priorities, scope, schedule, goals, etc. Once scheduled, we'll do a site visit, which will have a couple auditors coming to site, interviewing site personnel, getting a better understanding of the facility, and then going through the site and recording all the information about the building, the windows, doing counts of the lights, recording the lights, taking a look at the ballasts, looking at the insulation, the wall assembly, etc., etc. And essentially you collect all the information on site, get all the nameplates of all the equipment, and then you start doing your desktop analysis and energy modeling. You download all that information, we start doing our engineering work on it, put it into an energy model, and then from that, we start identifying projects that will actually reduce the energy consumption of the building. And once all of that's quantified, we put it into a report, show the recommendations to the client, and then, if we've done our job well, and if they're looking to move forward, we typically try and work with them on an ongoing basis to make sure that they're actively implementing these projects and doing so in a logical way. In terms of on-site expectations, typically the audit will take 3 to 8 hours, can take 20 or 40 if it's a big enough facility, or just 1 if it's small enough. So those are definitely generalizations. The process will include, as the list says, site interview, measurements of the facility, recording of the HVAC, electrical, mechanical equipment, building envelope equipment, taking a look at the electrical set controls, set points, detailed lighting count, renewable energy assessment, and then looking into all the nooks and crannies and figuring out all we can about how the building's built out. And then finally, we do a thermal imaging test to take a look at where the how the building envelope is performing and some of the mechanical equipment. From all of this, we get a report. And in the report, we will have several key deliverables, of which it's a facility description, utility analysis, energy end use breakdown, energy conservation measures, next steps, and a summary. And quickly looking into all of these, here would be a standard facility description in a multi-unit residential building. You can see we've got, you know, an inventory of all the plumbing equipment. This comes in handy when quoting out projects, communicating with contractors. You really have a full inventory of your building and a lot of details as to what's where and you know, certain consumption numbers. And then same with heating, you know, we can see, you know, some pictures, and obviously there are lots more pictures that can support this, but just for the report's sake, some pictures of the equipment and the general location, equipment, quantity, and function. So this is handy for people getting to, if you switch building operators and they need to familiarize themselves with the building, that's handy, as well as communicating with outside contractors. Utility analysis, won't spend too much time on this based on time, but this just shows you, you know, your baseline energy consumption. It can identify any anomalies. So we can see in this year, there was a bit of a spike in the natural gas consumption. So it would be then part of our job to identify what happened in this time. And then our goal is obviously always to lower this, this curve to make it so we consume less energy. And then an energy end use breakdown. So this is a pie chart that shows you the relative consumption within the building. So we can see, you know, this is the electricity use breakdown, primarily lighting and elevators within this building with some HVAC loads. So that gives us a good this identifies where we should really approach our savings. We know that there's a lot of room for savings here in lighting, and if we can make an impact on lighting, we can make a big impact on the building. And finally, my last slide here. This is usually what a lot of the clients are most interested in. And in this case, these are some of the projects that were identified in this building. And it shows you the project cost, any incentives. So this was a building that did not qualify for incentives. The electricity savings, natural gas and water savings, utility, and then maintenance savings, along with some other financial metrics, return on investment, NPV, emissions reduction, and so forth. So this is really what most clients take the most use from, and this is a lot of what we use in formulating a plan for net zero. So with that, I will hand it back over, and thank you all for taking the time to listen to me.
Thanks, Adam. Great presentation. All right, our third poll question of the day. What level would you consider your knowledge on sustainability and net zero buildings? Beginner, intermediate, or expert? Let's see. Okay. A few more seconds here. Okay, we'll close this one off. So majority say intermediate. Awesome, thanks everyone for voting. Okay, we'll move on to our final presentation by Floyd of eDecisions.
Hello everyone, let me start by sharing my screen. There we go, hope everyone can see it. Good morning / afternoon, everyone. Yeah, today I would like to talk a little bit more about how to achieve that pathway to net zero and which technologies to use when and how to look at that. We are a team, we've been active since 2015, and we're a team of technology experts, passionate people with a software tool that we model through. We have a lot of different clients, from post-secondary institutions to commercial real estate, industrial real estate, governmental associations, municipalities. There's been a number. Anyone basically with a large energy bill and a goal they want to do something about. And as we've talked today already a little bit about energy data management with EnergyCAP Canada, thank you very much, Jared, and energy audit as well with Adam. Thank you, Adam. Now we're going to jump into energy and carbon roadmap. And effectively, we're going to go through a number of steps here and how to balance these all out. It all starts with being very clear about your goals and constraints. Then always the first step after that, after getting a baseline as well, in terms of what the current situation is that we already talked about, is conservation. It always starts with conservation. The energy audit and Adam's work play a big part in that already. Then it's about balancing the various objectives that you want to take into account to achieve your goal. There's cost reduction, resilience, carbon reduction, and in the end, you usually also do an element of offsetting, just because the last ton of carbon you want to offset tends to be pretty expensive. And by that point, you have a net zero plan afterwards, basically. And so step number one, and I just want to quickly delve into this because there's a lot of different goals and constraints that each individual organization might have that can complicate things, also because it's usually not all about one, but about balancing multiple together. So here's a list just to give you a bit of an idea there. And that also includes things like maximum capital and budget you have available, deadlines you need to be aware of, the current conditions of equipment in terms of constraints. All these things play a part in figuring out your ideal pathway to net zero as well. And then, as we talked about so far, and EnergyCAP Canada and SPG play a pretty important role in that, but us at eDecisions picks this step up as well in our efforts, also especially when we're hired separately, for example. We have to determine the size of the problem where we're at currently. And I'd like to direct your attention here a little bit. Let me just get the screen away. There we are. I'd like to direct your attention to, on the right side, you see in this particular current example client, and it's a real one with anonymous data now, obviously, but a real client. You see that the cost is primarily coming from electricity, and actually a big chunk in electricity delivery costs. Yet the energy usage is actually mostly gas, not electricity. Despite that, most of the carbon footprint is coming from your electricity, not from your natural gas. So that leads to two sort of directions on where to go. One is we've got to work on electricity delivery costs, and that's all about managing peak demand, because those have an outsized impact on your energy bill. And I'll get to a little bit more detail there in a minute. And the other bit is, since the grid is clearly dirty in this case, we got to reduce the reliance on consumption, electricity consumption off of the grid, basically. And this is so as I said, this is post-secondary in Alberta. The grid's pretty dirty there. I'll get back on that. Then this is a complicated slide. Let me walk you through it before you start interpreting everything left and right. So this is about, as I mentioned, you always got to start with conservation. And on the top left, you see a distribution of energy consumption on a per hour basis for January for one specific organization. And we've modeled here the impact of LED lighting. So you see the entire line going a little bit down because of LED. And the most important thing to be aware when it comes to conservation is some of them have really good ROIs and financial metrics, and LED is certainly one of those, and we've mapped that out at the bottom. You see here pretty good net present value. Also, the energy recovery ventilators, they tend to be pretty good, but envelopes, for example, tend to be pretty bad from an ROI perspective. But obviously, any envelope upgrade would usually also include a goal of, comfort of people in the building and maintenance and things like that. But the main thing to walk away with here is conservation is a critical first step, but will not get you there all the way, just because we cannot go back to a world where we don't need electricity for our facilities. And you can see that here. It's a really good, financially interesting thing to pursue, but it only has about 8% impact, the LEDs in this case. And you can also see, that's basically it. Yeah. All right. And that brings us to the cost reduction objective. And you see here on the top left, again, I'll walk you through these steps, the year distribution by hour for a particular organization. There's a lot of big peaks involved, but also the baseline, the base load is actually pretty high. So putting in a CHP in this case, a combined heat and a combined heat and power generator effectively takes care of that base load. And afterwards, you see the entire thing going down, right? But an important comment here is, so the cost performance before was largely electricity delivery as well as electricity. Afterwards, you see electricity usage becomes very limited. However, the electricity delivery cost is still pretty high comparatively, despite barely using electricity after this change. And the critical thing there is peak demand. That is an outsized impact on. This is another example, just to dig into that a little bit more. This is a organization also in Alberta that has really high heating needs in winter. It's a seasonal business. And you can see those peaks shoot up in the winter months here, basically, right? If you put in one CHP, combined heat and power generator, you take care of some of that base load and you reduce the overall, but you're not actually addressing peak demands. Inevitably, it only has up to that capacity, right? And so there's still peaks above it where you have to purchase from the grid, but also it has maintenance times and times where it's generally off. And how it works usually on your energy bill, and by far most places, is that a big part of your electricity delivery cost is actually caused by your biggest peak in the last year. So one bad day where the generator's off and your peak is huge has a huge impact on your energy bill in a given year. So we got to do something about those peaks. Now, putting in a secondary CHP to deal with some of that peak demand that is sometimes on and sometimes off, and obviously won't have the same maintenance, has massively improved metrics immediately. Because with the first one you see, because the peaks are still pretty high, the financial metrics are pretty bad. Minus 4.4 million net present value and almost forever simple payback time, basically. However, the moment you add a second one, it is a massive improvement in ROI. And that's really how you have to look at it, because you deal with these peaks so much more. As you can see, it's about 39%, 40% towards goal achievement, which in this case is net zero by 2050. And obviously that's not the full thing. If you switch to renewable natural gas, that has a huge impact immediately on your goal achievement towards net zero carbon by 2050. The downside of renewable natural gas, though, is that's a lot more expensive versus other natural gas. Hence, you see that reflected as well. In the financial metrics, they turn worse. Basically with the benefit of getting to the goal a lot faster by using cleaner fuel. Another goal to take into account, and I'll be really brief about this one, is some organizations care a lot about resilience. And we'll use an example briefly here of a grocery store. As one can imagine, if your power is out for a little while, you can chuck out a whole bunch of inventory. That's very expensive. So they want to rely on, I want to make sure I always have a level of electricity and heating and cooling as well, obviously, to make sure my business continues running and I won't incur that cost of having to check out a bunch of inventory. Different businesses have different needs here as well. For example, a senior care, senior citizen care home, for example, will also have similar resilience needs because they have lots of health-related equipment. And then we get to carbon emissions reduction. Now, generally speaking, a lot of people say, you know, let's just electrify everything. What you effectively do by electrifying everything is you put everything on the system and on the grid as a whole to become clean over time. So you're basically putting your faith in government as well as utilities to take it seriously, and then you're kind of riding the wave that they are creating. In a lot of places, that can be a pretty bad idea, just because it's still pretty dirty, and it's going to take a long time for that to change in many of these regions. You see here a map of different provinces and US states and how dirty they are. We've highlighted Alberta, and that is pretty dirty. So switching, if you would electrify everything now, it may or may not be expensive. It's also going to be bad if you're in a dirty, sort of a dirty grid place. It's going to be bad for your footprint as well. And I want to walk you through this practical tool, and we can share this as well. So sort of a map on how to approach the carbon emissions reduction and what technology to look at in what type of situation. And as we talked about, it starts with conservation. SPG does a big element there, the LEDs, the envelope upgrades, etc. Then the next question is, how dirty is your grid? If your grid is currently clean, electrification technologies come into play, from heat pumps, electric boilers, but also, for example, replacing your vehicles with EVs, your fleet, basically. If the grid is actually dirty right now, then there's two things you got to approach. One is heating. You got to look at alternative heating technologies, from high efficiency furnaces to fuel switch to renewable natural gas that we showed earlier, biomass, hydrogen, lots of different options there, but effectively got to look at cleaner versus the grid options to do it yourself. Then you can look at electricity as well. And looking at electricity, there's another question. Are you able to sell back to the grid? And in some places you can, in some places it's a lot more restrictive. Often there's a limitation in place that you cannot sell back more to the grid than you purchased. So that's something to take into account as well, potentially making it more complicated. And then different parts of the day might have different rates. So that plays into it as well. So if you can sell back to the grid, you want to start looking at low carbon electricity generation, and you can push that back to the grid and even make a decent ROI off of it that way as well, potentially, depending on how you schedule it. So we're looking at solar PV, but also wind, for example. If you can sell back to the grid, then you still want to minimize the grid electricity you rely on by having these similar technologies like solar PV, wind, in this case also a hydrogen CHP. But you probably need to combine it with storage. Because, you know, as you cannot sell back to the grid in times, for example, where it's sunny, you want to store any excess so you can use it in times when it's not sunny, for example, right, or when it's dark. Then you might need batteries. These still tend to be quite expensive, but there is promise in vanadium redox flow batteries. So we expect there to be change in the next 5 to 10 years when this becomes a whole lot more interesting from an ROI perspective. And generally speaking as well, as a comment, you'll find that technology basically flows like this as it matures. And on the vertical y-axis, you have cost dollar per kilowatt, basically. And then from left to right on the horizontal axis, it speaks of maturity. And then generally speaking, you find that new technologies tend to not be overly available in lots of places. And they also tend to be still very expensive in terms of dollar per kilowatt. And as it matures, it becomes more available, and it generally becomes a whole lot cheaper as well. And especially once it reaches commodity like leads and things like that, you can buy those anywhere pretty much. Those tend to be quite economic. There's exceptions like envelope, but we talked about that already. There's other reasons why to approach that, and it usually is still important to enable other technologies. Because, you know, if you start using your heat, but it leaks away like crazy, then, well, it's not the best outcome effectively. And as you have no doubt surmised from me talking about all these various things that are taken into account, there's different types of technologies you can combine in different kinds of ways with different maintenance and times and schedules and sizes as well. Then there's different goals and constraints to take into account, whether or not you can sell to the grid, how dirty the grid is, and taking all those things into account quickly becomes an endless list of computations you can't do manually. And that's kind of where we come in with eDecisions. We map this all out automatically and combine lots of different technologies, and effectively our tool optimizes towards an ideal pathway. We present these various options like this. On the left, you see the list of options and sort of technology combinations and pathways you could pursue for specific buildings that we showed in some previous slides as well, with a lot of financial metrics. And on the right, you see them in a bubble chart for easier selection. And that's usually the case as well. If you want to get to implementation, there's usually a gap, and the poll sort of indicated that for some of you already as well, between what we should be doing and then communicating that to stakeholders and C-level so they can actually make an informed decision, especially if the CFO may or may not be aware of what a CHP or PV actually stands for. So it usually makes sense to include lots of financial analyses as well as risk analyses. And on the right, you see the very important one as well. What if our forecasted grid rates are off by a certain percentage? What does that do to your investment thesis? So we support that with lots of those risk analyses, including a Monte Carlo one, which is helpful for C-suite, as well as any funding you want to get through government or something like that. It can help with grants as well. And that brings me to the last slide. I would love to talk about this more. We love this topic. So if you want to learn more about what this might mean for you, or you want to learn more about how we come up with this methodology, or if you want to partner, please hit us up. I'd love to have a chat. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Floyd. Thank you to all our presenters. Well, we're finished with the presentations for today, and we'll move on to Q&A. So Mark Chidwick and I will be facilitating this session, or this portion. We had a few questions. One of them One that we also found in the poll as one of the answers is once you have a plan to get to net zero, many organizations will then need to find sources of funding. What are sources of funding that people can access? Do you have any knowledge on that? That goes out to all the panelists.
Well, I'll jump in on that one. Mark Chidwick here at eDecisions. It depends on who you are. If you are a municipality, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities has some great programs to help organizations develop their plans to get to net zero, as well as funding the actual projects. Emissions Reduction Alberta, again, this is just for our Alberta clients, has another really good program called Energy Savings for Business, where they'll fund up to 50% of the energy emissions reduction projects you might be interested in. The third area is private financing. There's lots of organizations out there that have got a ton of cash that they would love to deploy in projects that have got good ROIs. And these would be long-term, low interest rate kind of loan/grants that the private organizations can provide and get these projects off the ground. Then on the research side, there's Alberta Innovates, Western Economic Diversification, and the federal SDTC. They provide funding more for research type projects. So something like geothermal. Geothermal might funded with that kind of a project, or sometimes organic Rankine cycle, something that's a little bit. They want to de-risk higher risk projects. That might not be the game for everybody here today, but those types of funding are available.
I think generally as well, a lot of people think like figuring out a path to net zero or generally becoming sort of greener and cleaner is mostly going to be very pricey for you. But that very much depends on what you're doing. There's a lot of stuff, especially if the grid's dirty and the spark spread difference in cost between gas as well as electricity is good, then actually lots of really positive ROIs and wonderful net present value projects are possible. And that really opens the door to lots of private funding. It's about figuring out what you do. It doesn't all have to just cost money. It can also make you money.
Yeah, and I'll further on that. There's a program out by the federal government right now called the Green and Inclusive Community Building Program, and that program is eligible for municipalities and Indigenous communities throughout the country, and as well as not-for-profits. And part of the prerequisites of that program is that you actually do have a RET screen energy model done on your building that communicate, and that you achieve above 30% energy savings or greenhouse gas savings in your model. And they will fund up to 100% in certain instances of the entire retrofit project. And you score more points the closer you get to net zero. So if you are a municipality or a not-for-profit or a First Nation or Métis settlement, it would be a good opportunity to move towards net zero by utilizing that program. And we've worked with some communities who are utilizing that program to try and do very deep retrofits on their building, sometimes achieving very close to net zero.
Awesome. Any last words there, Jared?
I mean, Mark stole my thunder. He knows all the, that's what I would have said. So thank you for putting me well. And eDecisions is really good at that. So if you are looking for funding, I definitely, speak to them about that.
Awesome. All right, we have a question from Kirk Johnson. He says, can panelists comment on how their platforms feed into ESG reporting?
I'll jump in again. The E in the ESG is all about the energy and reducing the energy. That's certainly how EnergyCAP and SPG and eDecisions can fit in very, very, very well. So the S and the G, though, social and corporate governance, that's a different kind of management consulting exercise that is very complex. One of the things that is more challenging on the E side, the energy side, is looking at both all of your Scope 1, 2, and Scope 3 emissions. So getting your building to use less energy, being more efficient. Okay, we're talking now Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. It's the Scope 3 that actually is going to be really challenging. And there's organizations, some partners of ours that this is where they would focus in looking at the entire supply chain of your Scope 3 emissions and bringing that into, what kinds of projects can we do? They become bubbles on those bubble charts that Floyd was showing. And we could look then at the financial benefits of doing different kinds of Scope 3 projects.
Generally speaking, like at eDecision, what we do, like ESG reporting feeds well into the data that we need, and we can make that actionable to figure out a plan, how to get somewhere. And that you can then communicate back to whoever cares about that reporting, whatever stakeholder you have.
Okay, great. I have another question here. Given you all work in the energy space, we know that hydrogen is buzzing in this world right now. Would you say that that's the best way to get to net zero? What are your thoughts on hydrogen?
That's a really hard one. So right now, hydrogen goes for about $12.50 a kilogram, which makes it extremely expensive compared to the energy and natural gas. So that challenge is there's really only two ways currently of generating hydrogen. One is steam methane reforming, which really takes the hydrogen out of natural gas. But you're still going to be using a fossil fuel, and so your emissions will actually increase as a result. The other common practice is electrolysis. That's basically taking the hydrogen out of water, but and typically using renewable energy like wind and solar. But that's very, very expensive. I have read some reports, though, that suggest that in this decade, hydrogen is going to reduce in price from $12 a kilogram to $6. Should that happen, now we are in a game changer space where we can use hydrogen for everything from your boilers and your HPs to generate electricity, and like I say, it's a game changer if that happens.
So basically, right now, it's economically really not interesting just because of the amount of dollars involved. It's not a very efficient thing, but there's a lot of effort there in terms of R&D. And if things go well, and certainly a lot of people put that effort in, it will change the game completely. So we're kind of holding on for that.
Any other comments on hydrogen, Adam or Jared?
Not in particular. I think it's definitely going to be a large role in the energy transition. Particularly, it's going to be super impactful as we transition away from internal combustion engines. I think it'll be the main competitor with electric vehicles. It has different drawbacks and advantages, and yeah, I'm keen to see how it plays out. It's definitely going to be something that we are working on and keeping a finger on the pulse over the next couple of years. So, but yeah, it's just not based on the price right now. We aren't seeing it deployed a ton in conventional retrofits, but I definitely don't think that will be the case forever.
Okay, great. We have about a minute left. I have one more quick question. Given you all work, we have energy data management, we have energy audits, and the energy roadmap, as Floyd pointed out before. Have you three worked on projects before? What did that look like if you did?
Who wants to take this one?
I can start. So I know SPG and eDecisions worked closely together on a carbon plan for a large facility in Calgary. I think we looked at, it was a site with upwards of 8 sites, eight individual buildings. We energy audited all the facilities, and then eDecisions worked to develop a comprehensive roadmap as to what to do, when to do it, how to do it, where they could get money from, and a real pathway towards net zero. And then that was converted into a GICP application, the program that I just referenced, which is a pending application right now, where they will be hopefully getting to transition one of their buildings to a net zero facility. So yeah, that's all I'll say.
Yeah, we commonly work together with, so sometimes we're hired separately and we do some of that baseline initially as well. It tends to get quite a bit better if a sustainability consultant doing an energy audit is involved as well. So we work together with a number of them, certainly SPG being a primary, one of our primary partners in that. Commonly, we see with clients that they may or may not have clean utility and energy data. And then we spend a lot of time having to finesse that and make that usable so we can do our modeling afterwards. That's also why EnergyCAP Canada is really critical. And we're currently exploring a deeper connection there that we can smooth out those processes and start with really solid data, basically.
Awesome. Okay, well, we're about a minute over, so just in time, and I'll wrap it up here. Thank you everyone for attending, and thank you to our presenters for your wonderful presentations today.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.